You ready to
Cool.
go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Three, two, one, let's go. Swizec, welcome, buddy. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Very well. Enjoying the south of Spain winter. Right now there are 15 degrees outside. It's extremely sunny, so life is
Nice.
wonderful. Tell us a bit about yourself. I will also add my points about how I met you, but let's start with the beginning. How would you introduce yourself?
So hi, I'm Swiss. I'm a software engineer. I work in startups in San Francisco. Right now, I'm in a biotech startup where I don't know anything about biotech really, but I built the web part of their business. So I like to think of myself as a software engineer who builds systems that happen to run on the web and use the web as their main interface. But there's a lot more interesting things that happen behind the scenes yeah, I guess that's how I would describe myself. Software engineer. I like to work on systems that happen to use the web as their interface.
Wonderful. And I would add to this introduction the fact that you are one of the very few people I know who completely moved, or more, not completely, but moved from Europe to San Francisco. I think you moved 10 years ago, if my
Hmm.
notes are correct. And the way I met you, as I was saying before starting the podcast, I bought at one point a book written by you, and I was also following, lurking is much better to say. I was also lurking on your posts about how what is your content business doing, and this is
Hmm.
something that we will approach in the podcast. So, without further ado, I will start directly with the hard questions. Hope that's okay for you. I know it's 6:30 in the morning, but that's why I send the
Sounds great.
questions in advance. And
Hmm.
one thing that's really on my mind recently, it's about prioritization.
Hmm.
We have a limited amount of energy and time. On the other side, especially as software engineers, we almost have an infinite amount of places where we can put our career bet. We can work for you ourselves, we can build something from scratch, we can join a small startup, or we can go in a big tech. You did many things throughout your career, tried different approaches. And I'm curious, do you have a process about how you select your next bet, how you select your next move? Do you put some questions like, should I join this or should I build myself? Or how does it work in
Hmm.
your mind?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I started my career a long time ago now. I guess I s- I started coding for money, for like actual money in like 2007, 2008. So not the best economy as you can imagine. And back then I started as in Slovenia we have these student jobs where you can work at school and then you get special benefits for how you can earn money where businesses pay less taxes. And that's how I started. I started with web development in that environment. And then from there, I started a startup, which didn't go very far because bad timing, various reasons. Startups are really hard. And then I started a freelancing business. And with that freelancing business, I was specifically targeting US startups because I realized that the core of the tech industry is in SF in Silicon Valley, and I always wanted to move over there. So I started with by remotely solo freelancing for US businesses, and my spiel back then was basically a lot of early startups need a lot of things to be built, and it's a really good way to learn a lot of different things to get exposed to a lot of stuff. But the founders usually don't have that much expertise. So as long as you're mostly affordable, they pay you a little less, but you get exposed to a lot of things, and you can. That was kind of my wedge in was hey, I can figure things out, I can build stuff for you, and you can pay me as a freelancer, so you're not spending as much money on on hiring full-time employees. I guess I now learned that that's the basic offshoring sort of approach, but back then it seemed like I'm doing something really cool and innovative. And then in like 2015 or so, I moved to Silicon Valley, and I realized that people here don't really, once you're local, people don't want to hire freelancers or contractors, because having a full-time employee increases your what was it? Increases your valuation, and also when you're full-time, you can then participate in the equity portion of it. So then I switched to working for startups full-time. So the way I think about it is there's essentially, at least once you're in Silicon, I guess back in Europe as well, but there's basically three different paths. You can start your own business, you can join a large established company, or you can join a company that's on a hockey stick, like going through an inflection point and going up. And starting your own is really good, but it can be very stressful. You have a lot of autonomy and a lot of agency, but you also get hit with all of the misses.
And also
Mhm.
startups have a very high mortality rate, infancy mortality
Yes.
rate, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's still the average or the mean survival rate for a new business is about 5 years. Um, and whether you get funding or not, it's going to be really hard, a lot of work. It's kind of hard to explain what is hard about it, but you're basically starting something from scratch, and it can be a wild ride. Joining a large business is really good for going deep on a thing. A larger businesses usually like you to be a specialist. And then startups, joining somebody else's startup, I think of it as really good leverage. Somebody else, I especially like to join early on, right after product market fit, because somebody else has put in the really hard work of validating a market, finding a business idea, figuring out what works. And then you can come in with a lot of software experience, software expertise, and you can make the business better. So there's a lot of value you can add. And as the business hockey sticks up, you can ride that way, gain more responsibility, still get exposed to a lot of different systems, but the work you're putting in a very similar amount of work as starting your own, but you're getting a lot more compounding on that effort because of the entire system around you. And yeah, I guess it's like, yeah.
And sorry for the interruption, because I realized that actually what you just mentioned, you can only understand when you are building something on your own from scratch. How important is that validation part?
Mhm. Yeah, the validation part is super important. So in general, I look for, when I'm evaluating a company or a startup, I like to look for, do they have a validated market? Do they know how to reach their users? Do they have a product that I think is good? And a little selfishly, I like to look for, do they have a product that I immediately know how to improve, or what are the things I would add? And then look for, just in terms of opportunity size, right? How big is the market? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Um, is I, I've learned over the years that working on something that's worth working on is really important, because everything is very similarly hard. So you might as well go for the biggest rewards possible.
Interesting. Weren't you ever tempted by the big tech and the huge salaries that are in big tech?
Yeah, big tech it's a special beast. Here, now that I have a lot of friends now who work in big tech, or in similarly sized companies, and all of them always talk about how big the salaries are and how much money they make. Nobody ever talks about how much they're enjoying their job or having fun at work. So I like to spend my days on things that I'm enjoying. And yeah, the money is nice, but it comes with a lot of, I guess it comes with a lot of bullshit, really. The money. Um, mhm,
I had Chris Coyer as a guest a few weeks ago, and we were talking exactly about this. And I think there is a balance we need to strike about how much you enjoy your day-to-day job versus how much
mhm.
you earn. Because okay, you can go in one place and make a spectacular amount of money for 2 years, and after that you get burned out and you never
Yep.
want to hear about computers or tech or anything again.
Yeah,
On the other
exactly.
side, if you are in a good place, you can do that for your whole life.
Mhm.
And having a nice job, I think it's a huge asset in its own, a job that you actually enjoy and are willing to do it forever.
Yeah, exactly. Like I always say, if you pay me $1 million a year, there's a lot I will put up with for a year or two. Um, but I've also heard stories of people working on one button for 6 months with a team of 50 people, and I don't want to do that. Um, like I would obviously say, because I think a lot of people misconstrue that, never take never take less salary than is comfortable for you. You should always use salary to cap your downside. And then once your downside is capped, I like to go for the highest possible upside. It's more fun to play with the unpredictable lottery tickets than with the big cash from big tech.
Skin in the game, as Nassim Taleb.
Exactly.
Uh, let's play a short imagination game. Let's
Hmm.
say that we are in 2026, so the year and the conditions are as they are in this year, but you don't have any job in Silicon Valley, you don't have any online following, you don't have anything. Only you're not even in US, you are back in Slovenia.
Hmm.
But you have your knowledge, your experience, your technical knowledge. How would you start today?
Oh, great. So today, with my skill, with if I have everything that I have right now, but like in my brain, but you wiped out everything else, I think I would probably start. Honestly, I would start very similarly. I think I would start with just building stuff. Find some problems that I think need solving. Especially now with AI and all of these new things, you can build a lot of product on your own. I think if you're like looking for funding or if you're sitting around waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're really missing out. You really need to have a working product with hopefully paying users, but at least with people who are giving you attention to to have something that I would call traction. So that's how I would start. I would start with just building stuff, trying to build apps, make something useful, put it out there, um, get some attention for it. If you have any money, just pay for ads, get it in front of people, show it to influencers, and like build something useful that people want to use. Start with something that you want to use and then start showing it to others and then go from there. Like, if you start small, I always like to think of it as like stair stepping or laddering up. You build something small, it becomes a little bit successful, and then you spin that up into a bigger opportunity. You work on that bigger opportunity, you go as far as it will get you, and then you leverage that up into a bigger opportunity. And I think that's how good careers are built.
So, indie hacking, that would be a good.
I think, yeah, I think because indie hacking, a lot of people think of indie hacking as an end goal, and it can be if you are, it's a very, I would say, brutal market out there. There's a lot of indie hackers, um, but and like there's what like 5 or 6 of them in the world who make 7 figures. Okay, maybe there's 20 now. The world is pretty big, but that's how I actually got out of indie hacking, was looking at, okay, so the biggest successes in indie hacking have businesses that are maybe making a couple million a year, and there's very few of them. But there's a lot of people who have a job in Silicon Valley who make seven figures a year. So that feels easier. And actually, a really funny thing in the US, I think the average millionaire owns a car wash. Um, yeah, the average millionaire owns a car wash or like a slew of vending machines or boring businesses like that. But I'm not good at those things. I can write software, so I would go into indie hacking, and having a small having built something where you're making $100 or $200 a month is going to teach you a lot about business. It's going to teach you a lot about evaluating companies. And it also makes you really stand out when you come into a job interview. Um, we, like at my company right now, we actually focus a lot on interviewing former founders or people who have built something. And we like to say that running a team at our company is about as hard as, or like, it's about as big in scope and difficulty as being a YC founder with like a team of 5 to 10 people. Um, it's very similar in complexity. So having that is really good training.
I can double that. I mean, everything that I've done online on my own, the books and the courses, they didn't make a huge amount of money, but they taught me so much about how, for example, why validation is so important, about
Mhm.
like trying stuff and yeah, many things. Um, Looking back now in your career, what would you say that are the daily or weekly habits that added a lot of growth, that they compounded a lot with the passing of time?
Mm, I would say the number one thing that really compounded is just building stuff, getting really in the weeds. And I think, I think I have, I have coded every day since I started, and I started when I was like 9. So co- I've now written at least a little bit of code every day for like 30 years, which sounds kind of crazy when I think about it. But I think that has really compounded, just like every day having an iteration, doing something. I think my blog and writing regularly has also had a really huge compounding effect. Some of it just in the attention I've gotten, the attention has been able to open doors, especially with moving to the US. It's a coming into coming into interviews and being like, hey, if you search my name online, you're going to actually find stuff. There's going to be things you can see. You can see that I'm a real person, that I exist. That has, I think that has opened doors in ways that I don't even fully realize. Um, and it like it creates opportunities when people know about you. So I think of that as like the like luck surface rectangle, where one side of the rectangle is the amazingness of the things you're doing, or like how cool the stuff is, and the other side is how many people know about it. And the bigger the area of that rectangle, the more opportunities you're going to get, and then the more opportunities you get, the better you can choose which ones are worth it for you. I think I now think there's a, so this is like a really old metaphor. I think now I would add a third dimension to that. So I think it's more of a uh, luck, luck, luck volume cube. And the third dimension is who knows about it. Because if you have 10 VC friends who think that you're doing really cool shit, that is way more valuable than 10,000 or 100,000 internet strangers who think your stuff is cool. So I would, um, I think that's also an important dimension. So like, especially if you work at a company, you're going to get much more bang for your buck if all of your sales team is super happy with, hey, when Daniel builds something, we can sell it for $1 million, and we just love it when he builds stuff. And when we go talk to him, we can make so much more money. That's going to do a lot more for your career than an app that makes $10, than another to-do app that makes $10 a month. Um,
What I would add to your notes, I think writing is good. Okay, you may become like internet famous or not via the stuff that you put out there, your writing.
mhm.
But I think writing is worth it intrinsically because it's like gym for your brain. If you are
Yes.
able to express yourself in writing, for sure you are becoming a much better thinker and communicator.
Mhm.
And especially in this context of AI, being able to express yourself correctly, it matters so much also for the model.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think writing regularly, the best quote I heard is, I write every day because I think every day. And writing things down forces you to really clarify your thoughts, get them out of your brain, stop ruminating, and they they go from really fuzzy to, oh yeah, I actually have to clarify it and figure out my thinking. And it's kind of a superpower when you meet people and they ask you questions, or you're talking about things and you're actually coming in with having thought about it before, having clarified your thoughts, researched it, found the right metaphors, the right ways of expressing yourself, and they're just coming in raw, straight from their brain. You have an advantage there because you've thought about this before, you've figured it out. And I also like publishing because then you get people yelling at you for in all of the ways you got it wrong or where it wasn't clear or asking follow-up questions, and that lets you clarify it further. So it's like a superpower in that way.
Learning in public, how Swix had.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Let's continue on this topic of writing and publishing online because at one point you wrote one or two articles, I think. I'm subscribed to your newsletter and I get all the emails. And I think you wrote two consecutive articles about why content it's a bad business. Even
Hmm.
if it made you close to $500,000. And I know you're at one point saying that you're paying your visa, if I remember correctly, based on your content business. And now you
Yeah.
come and say that content is a bad business. Let's talk about why do you consider content to be a bad business?
Yeah. So it's a bit tricky, right? Earlier in my career, I had a lot of time, and my time wasn't that valuable. And I had a lot of thoughts in my mind. I feel like if I don't write for a week or something, it's like my brain gets filled up and I have to get it out. So I would write a lot, and that was um, because just being noisy on the internet got me attention and helped me build my career. I also, like you mentioned, I used my content business as, I guess, what would you call it? As like evidence or a leverage to get my O1 visa, because you can use you. I was able to present myself as an expert in a tiny, tiny niche of the software business and say, look, this is important. People look at this. I'm one of the best in the world, and you can look at all of these arguments. And I think my lawyers ended up turning that into like a 700 or 800 page application letter for my visa. Um, it's insane. Um, but I don't think it's really that great as a business, and it took me a long time to realize that. Um, so there's a difference in doing content as a business and just doing content as a side product, or like some people call it selling your sawdust, or getting your expertise out there.
47 signals.
Yeah, 47 Signals calls it selling your sawdust. I think Jonathan Stark, and then in the old days, Nathan Barry used to talk about the value of being seen as an authority on the thing that you do. So writing helps you build authority. It builds you it helps you build credibility, and it helps you make position yourself as an expert in a thing. Somebody who can say, I've written a book on this, go read it, is always going to have an edge over people who just say, hey, I'm really good at this.
I heard this recently, sorry for the interruption, that a book is one of the best business cards you can hand out to
exactly.
someone.
Like if I give somebody this book, that's much better than saying, hey, you can go, like, trust me, bro. Even if they're not going to read the book, just seeing that you have a book builds confidence. But as a business, it's a really hard business. It's kind of like a treadmill. So the margins on business, on like, if you're doing this for the money, you really have to make it into the top 0.1%, because it's like the drop off is huge. There's, the best few authors so here's the thing. If you can be a New York Times bestseller, that is an amazing business. You're going to make millions of dollars. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. There are about, I think, maybe 100 to 1,000 New York Times bestsellers per year. There are, just in the US, I think there are there's probably close to 1 million books published every year in the US. Yeah, if you just look at the numbers on that, the odds are not in your favor. You have to really be the best.
It's kind of the same in Formula One. Yeah, it's cool.
Exactly.
It's cool to be Leclerc, but the chances of you maybe get into football, you have much more places where to find a decent team.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you look at racing drivers, the top 20 racing drivers in the world make tens of millions of dollars. The next 20 or 40 make millions, and then everybody else is actually paying to drive. It costs a lot of money to be a racing driver. And it's similar here. When I was doing my content business seriously, with the amount of work you have to put in to do it well, you really have to do it because you want to be doing it. I think even with the money, I don't think my hourly rate ever got better. So like if I looked at all of the money I was putting into this, and then all of the cost, and looking at just the profit as my salary, that profit, I don't think was ever bigger than a Starbucks hourly wage. So if I were, and that's considered super successful, yeah. Because like maybe this is because I'm in San Francisco. I think Starbucks pays around $20 to $22 an hour here. But most of your work when you're doing content does essentially nothing. So the money that most authors make isn't from the content itself, or it's not from the books, and the courses are pretty profitable, but they're even more work. But a lot of it comes from the consulting that they sell. So the way I think about if I think of myself as a business, I think of this as an authority builder, a credibility builder, etc. But my real goal is to use this to get a job that then either a full-time job or a consulting gig or something like that. I think of my job as I think of my daytime job as essentially the top tier of my consulting business. If you pay me X amount of dollars a year, then I'm yours full time, and you will get my brain and all of the stuff that goes into these books. I will push hard on your business. So if you look at just like the content side, this book, the last book, the Scaling Fast book, took me, I think, about 3 years to write. And because I'm a weirdo, I can actually tell you how much time I spent on the book in total.
We are the same. If you want, we can compare after the podcast, because I also have a lot of Excels.
So let's see. On this book, let me just click through my calendar far enough. Let's see if it can compute. Okay, it might take a while because it's going back pretty far. But basically, I spent 3 years. Okay, here we go. I have put so far 486 hours of my life into this book.
So
Which I
500,
guess if you're doing,
500 hours.
yeah, let's say 500 hours. So if I was doing this full time, it would still take a year, about a year. Um, is that right? 500 divided by, anyway, yeah, about 100. Okay, I guess if I was going really hard and I was a machine that can just write and do nothing else, I guess I could get this written in like 10, I guess 10 weeks or something like that, which is insane. But it took me it took about 486 hours, 500 hours. And I think so far my royalties have been about $500.
Yeah, Amazon.
So
Amazon is wonderful.
yeah, Amazon is wonderful for that. So far my hourly wage on this has been $1 an hour. Not really worth it, right?
I think the content is really. Tim Ferriss talks a lot about this doing projects, bets
Mhm.
that where even if you lose, you win. For example,
Yes.
if you write, okay, maybe you'll not become an internet celebrity, but you learn how to think and how to express yourself. I think
Mhm.
writing more or less technical books, it's kind of the same. Okay,
Yeah.
let's hope that the book makes it big, wonderful. But if not, even like that, someone will win because you are forced to learn about that specific topic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you've ever heard of the Feynman technique, having to Feynman technique is, so Feynman was a famous physicist. He said that the best way to learn something is to explain it to somebody else.
He was the guy who wrote You Must Be Joking, Mr.
Yes,
Surely You Must
Mr.
Be Joking.
Feynman.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. I think that was done from interviews. He didn't write. I don't think he ever actually wrote a book on his own. But he's a really cool guy. So he said that the best way to learn something is to explain it to somebody else. And I think that's where content really shines. Having to, when you think you know a topic, it's very different than when you're able to explain a topic. And a lot of software engineering, I think in other professions as well, as you go higher up in your career, more and more of your work actually becomes explaining explaining things to others, convincing others that not convincing, but arguing for your way of doing things. And that's where a lot of the autonomy comes from. So I think content is a really good it's a really good thing to do, but I wouldn't, unless you can be like, you know, New York Times bestseller level, I wouldn't count on content as the thing that will make you a lot of money, but you can use content to leverage it into big opportunities. Because a lot of businesses, especially when you get a little, probably not for entry level roles, but later on in your career, a lot of businesses actually hire people specifically so that they can learn from them. It's not they're not paying you the big bucks because uh, even in big tech, they're not paying you the big bucks because you type the fastest or you can write a lot of code. They're paying you the big bucks because you know how to solve the really expensive problems that they have. And the better that you can show, hey, I have solved these problems before. I know what I'm talking about. I know how to solve these problems, the easier those roles are to get.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Let's talk a bit more about your book. And now, for the listeners, I'm showing the Amazon page, Scaling Fast Software Engineering Through the Hockeystick. Tell us
Mhm.
a bit about what's inside.
Yeah, so this book is, I guess it's doing a few different things, but what I see it as your guide to surviving the hockey stick moment. When your business gets product market fit and enters hypergrowth, a lot of things change very quickly. Your team grows super fast. Like in my company right now, I think we like quadrupled the size of the team in a year and a half. we're probably going to keep going on that trajectory. So a lot of things change, a lot of processes break. The way you write code changes, the way you approach problems changes. Things that what's important, what's not important, all goes through very rapid changes. And the book is written in 3 sections. So I talk about scaling the business, scaling the team, and then scaling the software, the architecture, basically. And I don't really talk about. I don't go deep into scaling the business because there's a lot of better business books out there. But I like to give engineers a bit of a basis in understanding why they're doing all of this. Because if the business is not growing, nothing else is going to grow either. And as an engineer, you can see a lot of early signals into how the business is doing. So it's good to be aware of some of the numbers that you should know, um, like uh, like cost of acquisition, LTV, stuff like that, just to kind of know how healthy the business is. Um, always good to keep a tabs on that. Then I talk about scaling the team because this initial hockey stick is usually when you go from working as a bunch of soloists to actually having to work in teams. You become more of you go from a ragtag group of people who are building cool stuff to an org that you probably start splitting into multiple teams. You might start having some managers. You have to actually think about how you communicate, how you organize things. And then all of that, I think, really impacts how you can do your code and how you should structure your code. So I spend a lot of the book talking about that part, how to design your architecture, how to think through how things work. And I think all of these things kind of feed on each other. How your business grows impacts how your team grows, impacts how your code changes, how your software changes, and how your software and code change also impact what you can do with the team, how the team structure changes, and all of that together impacts how the business will do. It's very easy in this stage to smother the business by getting like overscaling too soon or underscaling, messing up how you do your team structures. It's a very sensitive time in the business. If you have really strong product market fit and you're making a lot of money, it's going to drag you through. Honestly, good. I always like to say that product market fit, when it's really there, feels like you're being dragged, kicking and screaming behind the business. Whether you like it or not, it's going to grow, and it's not something you can force.
One thing that really remind in my mind after your interview with Bas Stein, you said there that when you enter into that hockey stick moment is like grabbing a rocket ship who flies and trying to hold on as much as possible. And
Yes,
it's
pretty
like a
much.
rodeo, more or less.
Yes, exactly. You grab onto the rocket ship and you try to hold on for as long as you can. And meanwhile, you're actually building the rocket ship as well. So it's like things break, you have to fix them. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Let's talk about these chapters in part, and let's start a bit with the software architecture. I know you are
Mhm.
a big fan of this concept, and now in the age of LLMs, where the code production has got extremely good or extremely fast, I will say, software architecture is becoming a huge topic and a really
Mhm.
important one. From your experience, what works, what does not work when it comes to software architecture?
So I think software architecture is really funny because it's the thing behind your code that's influencing how your code works without you even really realizing. And um, when it's done well, the architecture is invisible, and you're thinking, what do my senior engineers or my principal engineers, what are they even doing? There's nothing like we're just writing code and it's working. Like nobody else is doing anything. But when the architecture is done poorly, it feels like you're constantly fighting the code. You're like, it's kind of like trying to run through mud, everything is dragging you back. You're kind of being pulled. I think of it as those ads where they take a slice of pizza and they pull it out, and there's cheese dragging behind it. That cheese dragging behind your pizza, that's your software architecture. When it's done well, you don't even notice it. Otherwise, it feels like you're just being pulled back, uh, like you're fighting something really sticky that's holding you back. And what was I going to say? So the way I approach this is it's very normal for architecture to start as a big ball of mud where everything is connected to everything. It's kind of intertwined. It's hard to work with. Any change you make could break anything else, and those are actually the things that slow you down, and that's what slows LLMs down as well. It's the verification step that they didn't break something, and the easiest way to make sure that writing your code doesn't break something is part of it is having those lines of communication so that the code tells you loudly when something is connected. But the other part is separation of concerns. So making things as self-contained, as unconnected as possible. So essentially, you go from a big ball of mud to trying to make small balls of mud. I wouldn't worry too much about the internals of your modules. So I'm a fan of modular architecture or service-oriented architecture, or once you have hundreds of engineers, a microservices architecture can be good too. But you don't need to go full microservices. Just splitting things into clearly defined modules or units is enough. Have clearly defined interfaces between them. Know when you are going across interfaces. And then on the inside, especially now with LLMs, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Uh, it can be muddy on the inside as long as it's self-contained and has a clear interface for how to interact with it.
Did you learn this through experience, or you also had some really good books that popped into change the way you think about?
Honestly, a bit of both. I feel like the best engineering books, when I read them, always feel like, oh, wow, I should have read this 10 years ago. It would have been so useful. But if I read it 10 years before, I don't think I would have thought, oh, this book is bullshit. Like they don't know what they're talking about. So I think in terms of books that really helped me think through these things, I really enjoyed the Phoenix project. It talks about essentially how to bring DevOps in. It talks about DevOps principles in a large muddy code base and a lot about the process of software. What The other one I really enjoyed was software engineering at Google. It's a very it talks in a big tech uh, what is it, in a big tech context, yes, but it felt very applicable to even a lot of much smaller businesses. They talk about how you have to build enough automation that you're scaling sublinearly. So the more you scale, you don't need to add as many more people as you're scaling, or worse, having your people hockey sticking, but your business going linearly. You want your business to go linearly or hockey stick up, while the number of people you need to support it grows, I think, logarithmically, so, or asymptotically approaching some flat line. You can do that with architecture, with automation, stuff like that. A lot of it also comes down to communication. I think of tests and types as secretly they're about communication, so that you don't have to go talk person to person. You have you leave breadcrumbs in the code that tell you when things break. What are some other? Right now, I'm reading Data Intensive Applications. This feels like another book that I should have read at least 5 years ago, but I'm reading it now, and it's great. It talks a lot about databases and how a lot of modern apps are. The complexity really comes in the data and the data modeling. The the numerical scaling, or scaling your compute, is really easy these days. So yeah, and I guess the other thing I'm a fan of, and I think I learned this mostly by osmosis, is domain modeling. So making sure that you really understand your domain, doing the hard work of figuring out where all the bits and pieces are, and then translating that as close as possible into your code so that your code corresponds to how your domain works. And here I would say domain modeling really gets fun once you have two or three different stakeholders or groups of people who think about the same objects in your database in a different way, and where you have to have one. That's usually where the really fun engineering starts happening, is when you have one system that three different groups of people think of as, well, obviously it works this way, and they all think it's extremely obvious that it works the way that they think it works and that it should work the way they think it works, but they have three or more opposing ideas of what that actually means. That's when things get really fun, and that's usually what happens as you start hockey sticking. You start exposing those friction points. hmm I think scaling up teams, I'm still, until a year ago, I thought I had a much clearer idea of what works. But now I'm a little less sure, just because I'm in the thick of it.
Humans are
Um,
complicated.
Humans are really complicated, and I think every business is a little bit different. In general, what works is having teams that are aligned to your business domains. So there's a bunch of different consultants calling these different things. You have the team topologies folks call it stream aligned teams. Then you have Martin Fowler and that group of people that call it, I think, business domain oriented teams. There's another one that I don't remember what it's called, but the general idea that everyone agrees on is that teams should own stakeholders, or they should own business units, and build their software to support that business unit as close as possible. And then they should use APIs or communication APIs, either HTTP APIs, like I'm talking about API as an interface, not as a technology. There should be a clearly defined interface between these core modules that are aligned to teams, and then they combine together into a working system. Um, so I think that's what works. Teams that really own their business domain, because that's how software engineers can build the expertise. That's how they can understand what they're doing. They get to really. I like to talk about it as uh, get us over the water, not build us a bridge. Uh, the most unrewarding way of being a software engineer is when you're a ticket monkey, when somebody else tells you go build this and you go build it and you have no idea why. The most rewarding is when you can work directly with stakeholders, or you have a PM that you work with, where they say, hey, we need to get over there. This is why we need to get there. Here's the business opportunity. Now it's your job to figure out how to get us there and what is the best way of getting there. And you can really do that when you own a business domain or a set of stakeholders, or a work stream, if you want to call it that. And you can deeply understand how it works, deeply understand all of the little nuances. And that's how you also build those flywheels, so you can work faster and faster, because a lot of the work is in understanding the domain. But then once you have the core understanding, it's very quick to add new features, add new things on. And I guess because it's 2026, it also makes it a lot easier to translate between business people and LLM prompts to tell them what to do.
For a couple of years, I worked for Skillshare. You most likely know it, and it was one of the few companies that I saw that they were making this link between the business objective and the technical side of things. The scope in the end was to increase the sales, to increase the conversion.
Mhm.
It was never about the underlying technology or the tickets in Jira or something like that. And
Yep.
it's very funny, very rewarding, as you said, because you start to feel like a player in a football team. Your
Hmm.
scope is to score goals, not to be on the field.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, exactly. I think one, I forget what the book was called, but there's a book where they talk about playing to win rather than playing to play. And you really want to be there because you want to achieve some objective. In my book, I think I go as far as saying that if you're not working on something that's increasing the value of your product or increasing the number of people buying it, you should probably reconsider what you're doing, because ultimately those are the two things that all of your work ladders up to. And when it comes to technologies, because when you're growing that fast, when you're going through the hockey stick or hyper growth, you're basically a new business every 12 to 18 months. The technologies you use are going to change. Will Larson had a really good book. I think this one was maybe targeted at executives. I forget what it was called, but his latest book, he says that the businesses that win aren't the businesses with the best technologies, but the businesses who are the best at migrating from one technology to another. Because when your business is changing, when you're basically a new business to every 12 to 18 months, that means the things you're building today are going to be outdated and legacy in a year, and you're going to have to transition off of them and transition into something new. So the stuff that you build when you're a seed stage startup making 10K a year, your needs are very different than when you're making $1 million a year or when you're making $100 million a year. And you won't be able to scale that technology all the way through. What you can do is throw it away, get vendors, get different vendors. There's completely different SaaS products that target small businesses, medium businesses, very large businesses. So you're kind of always in the midst of some transition or another. So the faster you can do that, the more efficiently, the better. And I think that's where having small isolated modules or small balls of mud really helps, because you can take those balls of mud, throw them away, and place in a new, better one that keeps roughly the same API. And then you can kind of piece by piece keep replacing your business that way, or your software.
Point, indeed, indeed. Oh, yeah, a really great point. Um, can I hold you up for 10 more minutes? Okay,
For sure.
wonderful. There are a couple of questions I would like to ask you. Um, let's talk about, because our last part of the conversation was also a bit about the culture in an organization. And I'm curious from your perspective as someone born in Europe and staying so much in US. What are the main cultural differences you feel as an engineer, as a, I don't know, tech worker versus Europe?
Um, so it's been a while. It's been a long time since I was in Europe, and I would also caveat it with I never had like a real job in Europe. Not really, maybe a little bit. But I think the main difference is the attitude around work. In Europe, it's a cliche, but in Europe, people seem to work to live, and here, at least in Silicon Valley, people really live to work. So there's a lot in the US. There's a much higher expectation that you're going to emotionally and like you're going to align your identity with the company, whereas in the US, not so much. So it's really a really interesting part. When I've done workshops in the US, and you ask people to introduce themselves. In the US, people are always like, I'm so and so, and I work for this and I work for this company, and we're building this thing and that thing, and it's really great. And in Europe, everyone's like, I am so and so, and they basically don't even mention the company or what it is that they do for their work. They're just talking about everything else. Um, and I always thought that was interesting. People here really are really identify with their companies. They're really proud of it, proud of what they're doing, proud of what they're building. And in Europe, it's more of a like, oh yeah, work is something that happens on the side, but it's not my life.
I'm
I think
hearing
that's the main difference.
I'm hearing very often because I was sometimes I'm an advocate of the US style of doing things, and everyone is like, yeah, but those people are just living to work. Yeah, more or less, maybe they work double that Europeans, but they make 3 or 4 times more. So I think it's a good deal. Doing
I think
that
it's
extra
also,
work gives you this level of
yeah,
freedom and
yeah, the extra work gives you some freedom, but I think also a lot of it is, at least when you get equity, you are a part owner of the business. Um, those incentives are aligned. You're not, if you're just getting a salary and you don't feel attachment to the business, I totally get it. But once you have equity, once you are a co-owner, there is a lot of benefit in thinking of it as your business, as and putting like a bit more of yourself into it. And you know, I, I guess in some ways you can also tie this back to uh, Zen and all of those things. When you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes, etc. If you're working on something you actually enjoy, if you actually go into it, if you're not fighting it, it's going to be much more enjoyable. And you're doing this 8+ hours a day anyway, so you might as well you might as well enjoy it, right?
I agree. Being in because you're not just in US, you are in the city of hype, I will say, because all the time
Mhm.
was the gold hype, the gold rush. After that, all the technology hypes. We had desktop applications. After that, we had internet. After that, mobile. After that, crypto. Now we have AI. It feels that every time the game is changing, and I know many people, and most likely there are also in US that are jumping one ship to another. Now I'm a hyper expert in mobile. The next day they are an expert in crypto, and now there are everyone is an AI expert. How do you get real valuable timeless knowledge in a context like this one? The timeless knowledge that can be applied independent of the situation or the hype cycle.
So I think that's a great question. The city here is really weird. Right now, literally every billboard in the city mentions AI. Every company is AI first, or whatever. And I think 2 or 3 years, everything was about crypto, and before that, everything. You can really feel what is the current hype in this city. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's I like to describe San Francisco as the only place in the world where it makes sense to have ads for an API on the main freeway into the city. You really go there. There's a famous Twilio ad. You're driving into the city, and there's a huge red billboard that just says Twilio, ask your developer. And they had that billboard up for like I think five. I don't know if I think now it's no longer there, but it was there for many years, and everyone knew about it. Um, or like you have billboards for SOC 2 compliance. Where else in the world will you have a billboard on the freeway for SOC 2, which is like a standard? But anyway, um, it turns out that underneath all of this, nothing has really changed that much. When I was researching this book, I went really deep into academic papers, and you can read papers from the 70s and 80s that talk about, hey, here's how you should structure your team. Here's the difference between programming and software engineering. You can write little programs, but it's very different when you're software engineering. I think it would be really useful if I think there's a paper from I was it mentioned in the book from I think the mid 80s. That's where someone was like, I think it would be really useful if we organized our software so that it's aligned with the business domains and it's easier to understand how things relate to each other. We're going to have a much easier time. So a lot of those things are very timeless, and then the current hype is kind of just it's just like lipstick, the lipstick on top. It's the marketing. Like Salesforce didn't rewrite their entire company to become the AI of sales. Like 3 years ago, they were the crypto of sales, but it's still the same software. It's still just no, not Jira. It's still just like the same Salesforce stuff. Adobe's still doing the same thing. It's like a lot of the hype is very. It's just marketing. You spin whatever you're doing, but the core principles are pretty much the same.
Correct, correct. I think coming back to both Chris Coyer and also 47 Signals, they both mention at one point that human needs don't change. Nobody will want in 20 years from now a slower application, or
Exactly.
humans will still be human and will want to communicate with each other. So focusing also on timeless knowledge and also
Mhm.
on these basic human needs as a business and also as an individual, it's a very good bet to have in the long run, especially in an industry like ours that changes each 5 years, something new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think seeing a couple of these cycles really helps you see what has staying power and what is just hype.
Would you consider moving to San Francisco again now in 2026? Do you think it's less important or actually more important to be there? Because for some years, the world seemed to open up more and more. It didn't matter where you were, you could have a remote job, whatever. Now the current context of the world is changing so much, and maybe it's more important to be there, to be in person, to be in the office, and so on. So, what's your take on this one?
I think it's probably more important than ever, and I think it's not intuitive why it would be more important, because it feels like on Twitter and on the internet you can get all of the same benefits. We're currently talking across vast distances, and that's great. But being like we can definitely do more online, and it's really good. But when you're here, you're in the middle of the industry. I think of it as this is kind of like, if you want to work on blockbuster movies, you have to move to Hollywood. No matter where you are as an actor, going to Hollywood, it vastly increases your chances of working on blockbuster movies. Coming to Silicon Valley or coming to San Francisco vastly increases your chances of working at world-changing companies. It does happen everywhere else, but if you look at just the money, I think a couple of years ago I was looking, just the San Francisco Bay Area gets as yes, exactly, gets more business investment than all of Europe combined in a year. um, or like yeah. So just the money is bigger, but then there's also the talent. You can learn so much here just from being around people who have done these things before. If you want to build a hyper growth company in Europe, you're going to have a really hard time finding people who have experience building a hyper growth company. Here, hypergrowth companies are a dime a dozen. So you can hire engineers, you can hire managers, you can hire salespeople, you can hire people who know how hypergrowth works, who have experience with it, and who can tell you what to do. Same as in Hollywood, if you're making a blockbuster movie, you're gonna need to hire, let's say, 100 people who hold the boom mic and deal with the lighting and stuff. Nowhere other than Hollywood even has 100 people who can do that. And it's the same here. Like, I think OpenAI, let's use them as a fun example. ChatGPT, I know, still runs on Postgres. So huge but so Postgres relational database famously, that quote unquote doesn't scale. So OpenAI runs ChatGPT, one of the fastest growing applications in history, on Postgres. How do they do that? They literally acqui-hired an entire team of like 5 or 6 guys who were building a Postgres scaling startup, and they were like, hey, here's a few $1 million, come do this for us. And they figured out how to push Postgres to the limits. You can't do that anywhere else. So there's a lot of that here. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is it's good to come here just for the environment, for being around people who have done these things before, because you learn a lot just from the environment you're in, and you basically, over the long term, you become what was the quote? You become like the 5 people you spend most time with, and there's a lot of people here who have done hypergrowth, who have the experience, and they're just a coffee chat away. You can get into the informational and social networks where you can then learn a lot from.
I was actually thinking about this today while making a coffee, that if you don't want to become, we are much more that brains connected to a keyboard. If you want to be a brain connected to a keyboard, which is a very bad place to be in the long run, yeah, stay all the time online, just online. But if you want also to use your communication skills, your sense of humor, your values, your whatever, for that we need to be in person. That's, or at least from time to time, maybe not all the time, but from time to time.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, where would you send people to follow you?
Yeah, so check out my new book, Scaling Fast Software Engineering Through the Hockeystick, scalingfastbook.com. You can find me online if you, I have a blog on swizec.com. You can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky. I'm pretty much everywhere. So I like to tell people, if you type my name into Google, you will find stuff.
Super. Thank you very much, Swizec. I will let you now enjoy your free day. So thank you very much for this.